Welcome to Alignment First. We're on a mission to bring leaders back to their peace, presence, and power. And I've got the honor and the pleasure of jamming with my little brother, Eryk, Ya Boi Anders, newly retired from the UFC and the founder of Ya Boi's Fitness Academy in Birmingham, Alabama. Dude, welcome to the next season of your life, man.
Yeah, man. I think that's kind of what life is, man. It's like, the seasons is a good way to put it. You do this for a while, then it gets time to move on, and boom, 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 and just keep it moving.
Yeah, man. Going into the fight, I'm so curious about your prep for this one specifically because of all the stuff that you had started. It's one thing to fight, invest in some properties and get them to a point, whether it's through management or just like operational efficiency, those things kind of on autopilot. But you started a gym going into your last fight. And as from the outside looking in, it looked like this is one of your most minimalist in terms of all the extra moving pieces, staff, coaches, training partners, etc. going into this. Did you feel any kind of way getting ready for this last one compared to fights past where you leveraged more resources and had less going on?
Man, let me tell you, I was like, I don't never stress about nothing. But when I first started, they hit me up, was like, yo, you want to fight? I was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. But then, like, before I had the gym, I would wake up, train, eat, sleep, wake up, lift, eat, sleep, go train again. Dude, I couldn't do that with this. And I would even have to like leave practice early to come over here to teach, jujitsu and kickboxing and stuff. So I probably trained less for this fight than I ever have. And I was like, man, I'm not training properly. You know, my main training partner was going to he was in firefighting school, so he wasn't around much. But then I just, came to a point probably like 2, 3 weeks in. I was just like, man, fuck it. I'm going to just show up and fight and do what I can and let the rest take care of itself. This ain't my first rep. Like, I know what's up. Um, and that's what I did. And I just kind of trained when I could. And I'm like a creature of habit and nature. So when my rhythm gets thrown off, I kind of like scream in my head a little bit because it pisses me off. I like my routine. I'd probably
Mhm.
be the easiest person to kill. Like, if you for real wanted to kill me, you know exactly where I'm gonna be at. Same time every day. You can just wait for me. I'm gonna be there. So I was like, man, you know what? I'm gonna do what I can, and the rest is just gonna fall into place. And to be honest, I think like going into the fight carefree. That was actually kind of one of my better performances. Pretty dominant from start to finish. A few little
Mhm.
hiccups, but it's a fight, and the guy fought a vet. So just going out
Well,
there and getting the win. That was the most important thing.
yeah. Well, I've heard you say two things that really stick out in my mind. The first of which is sometimes you just got to bite down on that mouthpiece and just see what happens. I think I heard you say that for the first time uh, in in talking about the Tiago Santos fight, and when you guys came out for the second round, just stood planted in the ground and let it bang. And then I've also heard you say, your mentality around fighting anytime, anywhere. I'm always ready, and the way you prep or keep yourself on point is at any given time you can give it 3 rounds. Like that's kind of the
Yeah, I always got
mentality.
three
That's
rounds in the tank, man. When I
yeah.
keep that, I always got 3 rounds. So, I did all the lifting. I really made sure my cardio was on point because one, you recover faster after you take damage when your cardio is good, and
Hmm.
two, I really wanted to be able to push the pace and like be in his face and be able to wrestle and do everything for 15 minutes. So even though I'm not getting to like train how I wanted to train, the one thing I could control is how good a shape I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
So my condition was on point. I made sure my cardio was on point, and then I just needed to dial in the rest.
Yeah. Is there any additional pressure you put on yourself? This is the first one, if I'm not mistaken. Izzy was in your corner, ringside with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have any? Is there any? Because I'm asking all these questions. First of all, because like we've had a lot of these conversations, and at the same time, you are as an individual, let alone my brother, just genuinely interesting to me in terms of the way you look at life. And I know you don't stress about too much fucking anything or put any undue pressure on yourself when it doesn't matter where the stakes are at, high or low. Having Izzy sitting there ringside, did you walk into that octagon any different than you otherwise would have?
Not really. You know, he seen me fight. He was at the fight before when I got knocked out. You know, the only difference is he's just a little bit closer to the action. You know, so you know that's probably the worst case scenario you could get knocked out in front of your kid or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it didn't put any act, but it made the win even better.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That he was right there and he got to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like going into the fight, I was just like, I got to be honest, I kind of even forgot during the fight that he was there because I could hear my coach's voice, and then in between rounds, only two people can come in, so two of my coaches came in, and he was left on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like really forgot that he was there until it was over, and they were in the thing. It's like, oh shit, it's real sad.
when it's all said and done, because I know, you and I had conversations around like, this is it, no matter what, I'm done after this one. 20 is a great run in the UFC. When they put your hand in the air when it was all said and done, and do you have like second thoughts, like cut the gloves off, like maybe I give it some more, like
I mean, nah, I really didn't. And I'm like, still, it's been a little over a month since I fought. And I still feel the same way. Like, I'm at peace. I'm cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some other offers come in. I gave them my number. They didn't match my number or want to pay me what I wanted to be paid. So, I left it on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Would I fight again? Yeah, this is the thing. I can't compete against 20-something-year-olds. Now, against other 30 and 40-year-olds, I'm in there. You know what I mean? But those young guys, especially a lot of them haven't lost yet, they don't know their vulnerability. And I was like that too when I first started. Like when you, for real, don't think that you can be knocked out, you fight totally different before that happens. And so I just, probably like I feel like I can compete against probably 95% of the population, right?
Mm-hmm.
But against another trained fighter who's been doing this shit since he was, 7 years old, and now he's 25. This motherfucker got 18 years of experience. That's longer than I've been training, and he's youthful.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you feel like
probably
that's
not
where
gonna
the
be there.
yeah, do you feel like that's where the game is now? Like that's really the differentiator beyond, creeping up on 40 yourself. It's the training age of the guys that you're fighting. They're just so much more advanced and they have youth on their side, or is it strictly they're just younger and more durable?
They're younger, they're more durable, they got way more. They've been training forever.
Mm-hmm.
And even the sport has evolved so much since even I got in the UFC, 9 years ago. So like these guys, they're not the same guys that were there when I first got in. And I was that guy. I was like 30 when I got in, but the guy I fought my first fight was much older
Mm-hmm.
and all that. And I just, I don't want to be that stepping stone for the next guy. Oh, dude, he beat fucking Eryk, so he's next up, kind of thing. So when I go fight, other guys closer to my age, yeah, 100%. If the money's right. If the money's not right, I'm not gonna, fight for what with less than what I think I deserve or should fight for. So I'm not like desperate to fight. So if something comes
Yeah.
across, that's like, hey, we'll do this, this, and this, and you can fight a UFC vet or an older guy from another organization or whatever. Then yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah. Well, you got two brothers that served in the Marine Corps. I played ball, and we were kind of in the aftermath of your retirement going back and forth in our family thread about how fucked up we are in the surgeries and backs and knees and da 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 da. And you just had your knees scoped. Give me the laundry list of stuff that's going to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, man. Like
I don't know if Humpty Dumpty.
what have you been holding off on that you now have the time to start repairing yourself?
Well, I think rest is the number one thing. I'm not training like I was because even if I didn't have a fight, I was still training. 2-3 times a day. Now I
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of coaching and mental reps. I still train. I just had knee surgery, so I've been training the last few weeks. But I still train and try to stay in decent shape. So my how much I'm doing is way less than what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I'm not like getting like actual like sleep rest, like I'm not putting my body through the ringer like I was. So that's probably the most important thing I think. Not really important, but the biggest difference between now and then
Mm-hmm.
um, is the least putting way less output on my
Mm-hmm.
body.
Yeah. The I want to revisit this concept of identity with you because it's interesting. I've been having a lot of conversations in the veteran community of who were also high level athletes, and we've been kicking the can down the road on this notion that uh, athletes that became veterans experience the death of identity at least twice when sport is over and then they leave the uniform and come out into the civilian world. Have you had or are you amidst a similar transition ha- between football and the UFC and now leaving the UFC and stepping into being a full-time coach?
Not really, but probably if I didn't have that experience with football, it probably would a little bit because football didn't end on my terms. Like I still wanted to play ball, but somebody else said, you're not big enough, strong enough, whatever enough. So yeah, it was devastating. It's like you go from having this fucking super regimented life um, and being an athlete. Now all of a sudden, like you got to grow up and you're not an athlete no more. But this was way different because I got to choose. I knew before when I signed this last fight deal that I was going to retire. I knew I was going to retire after this fight 3 years ago. Now, when that, 2 or 3 years ago, and when that last fight was going to happen, I didn't know. But I've been had time to like mentally prepare, and then the stuff with football, kind of helped me make a decisive decision. And then I won my last fight. Israel was in my corner. You guys were there, so what better way could you possibly end your career on? So, winning the fight, it was like that was like the nail. If I would have lost, I probably would have been like, Shh, I might need to come back and do this again. But I went out on a win in the way that I wanted to go out. So it ain't
Mhm.
gonna get no better than that. So I just, and then I have this to fall back on. Like this is my plan B, kind of thing.
Mhm.
When football ended, I was like, what now? So it's I've definitely had time to like prepare mentally and get all my ducks in a row so that when this time came, like I could just bounce and be done with it. And I don't like people that might be my identity, like being a fighter and an athlete and all that might be my identity to other people, like fans and people who have met me, but that's not my identity for myself. That
Mhm.
was just, it was a career. It was fun. I'm really glad I had the opportunity to do so, but I didn't really ever see myself as just a fighter.
Right. Right. And to that end, and the way people are like, oh my God, your brother's Eryk Anders. Holy shit. And I tell them all the time, what makes you different than anybody I've ever met who fights. It's not about the money. I don't think you ever looked at it like it was a career or a job. I was like, what makes Eryk different from where I sit is he really likes that shit.
Dude, I love to compete, and like team sports are cool and all, but depending on somebody to catch a ball or make a tackle, I just really like. I'm thankful for football. Like it gave me a lot of opportunities in life, and it's probably why I got to the UFC so fast. Is I already had like a built-in fan base or whatever. But individual sports is where it's at for me. Like it's cool because you have like a team and you have to train with people. You're not going to get any better at training, just hitting the bag or wrestling around with a dummy or whatever. Like you need other people to invest in you, like a coach, training partners, things like that. But then when it comes time to compete, that's all me, and that's what really drew me to fighting is that. I like to fight. Like I like to do that stuff. I like to compete. I like to, fight, do jiu-jitsu, wrestle, all those things. And so it's just like a natural, career path or whatever for me.
Yeah. We come from a very anti-bully family. There's nothing an Anders dislikes more than a fucking bully. So to say that you like fighting I want to make sure people hear you correctly in that you don't enjoy hurting people. It's more so you being able to test Eryk's preparation against an external force, if that's the way to describe your opponent.
I mean, I don't mind hurting someone. They're trying to do it to me. You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
Yeah.
like, the golden rule in fighting is do unto others before they do unto you. So like, am I gonna go out like at a bar and like try to pick a fight with some dude? Nah,
Right.
of
My
course
point.
not.
Yeah.
Right, but like he signed on the dotted line. I signed on the dotted line. So I'm punching you in the face and you're punching me in the face. Yeah, so there's like no way to avoid not hurting somebody.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking to do that outside of that context, outside of the competition
Right.
part.
Well, and what's interesting, I had Molly's podcast is going to come out before this conversation, and in that conversation we had talked about one of the most interesting things about being raised the way we were raised is and why we move through the world with such peace is because in our own lives journey we've tested ourselves, right? And as you're now on the other side of it and getting to impart your wisdom upon others, what is it that you're seeing out in the world that is, because like the way I see it, there's just a lack of opportunity to test yourself the way that we tested ourselves early in life. What are you seeing as a coach now as you're starting to specifically work with kids in helping them become more resilient and respond to the world with better tools?
Well, like as far as like grown-ups go, like you're right, they never get tested, so they don't understand their own vulnerability. Like every time I hear a dude say, I don't do that because I see red or whatever. Like you're lying to not only whoever it is that you're talking to, but yourself. That is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I just see red. So you're throwing a temper tantrum, so you can't control your emotions. That's what I heard. You know what I mean? So I think like doing this like exposes you to yourself. Like if you have another person your age, your weight, your skill level on sitting on top of you trying to choke you, dude, there's no position that's more uncomfortable than be like, damn, I'm being choked out by a 15-year-old. You know what I mean? As a grown ass man. And as far as like the kids go, like a lot of the kids that I train, these are COVID kids. Like these are kids that were, you know, they're not like the kids from the '90s who their parents worked and a babysitter. What are you talking about? Go outside, dude. Just come home before you know. So they're not like out there, you know, wrestling around with their friends or, these kids. These nowadays they're inside a lot, right? So they're not like getting into fights in somebody's front yard or playing pickup basketball or doing those things. So they're just not. Everybody, especially men, I think, especially boys, they need to be exposed to that. They need to know that, I need to train. I need to do something because I'm not as tough or as this or that as I think I am.
Mm-hmm. It's about knowing, right? I'm curious how this went for Israel. I'll tell you the story of Tristan's first fight. 2 summers ago, he's in sports camp and everybody's jaw jacking. They're playing dodgeball. They're doing whatever. And, we taught him the, escalation of force, right? Shit gets weird between you and somebody else. Break contact, walk away. That doesn't work. Say something. That doesn't work. Tell an adult. That doesn't work. Hey, we got to figure this shit out. Right.
Yeah.
And he would come home and be sideways about the name calling and the shit talking or whatever. He's like, Dad, I just want to go to level 4 on these kids. And I was like, dude, that's not it. He's like, well, when will I know? And I was like, there will be no doubt.
Yeah.
You won't have to ask the question. And that's how it's not that, Well, fast forward, he's playing dodgeball with some kid, and Tristan's a rule follower, right? So he gets this kid out. He doesn't want to leave. Tristan stops the game. He's like, we're not playing until you leave. And this kid walks up on him, and gives him a 2-piece. Tristan fucking takes his back, rear naked chokes this kid till he goes out. And the camp counselor or whatever separates the two of them. I get a phone call from Nicole, and she's like, hey, Tristan got in a fight today. And I was like, there's only 2 things I need to know. 1, is he okay? 2, did he start that shit? She's like, yes, he's fine. And no, he didn't start it. I'm like, cool. Well, did he win? And life goes on, and we get to reinforce that lesson. You know what I mean? But what's important about all that story is not whether he won or lost from me as a dad, but more so he knows where the line is. He'll for the rest of his life.
The confidence that he has now, he's like, it actually works. Jiu-jitsu actually works. Right. So now the confidence, he probably walk a little different, probably got a little different swag, you know what I'm saying? He's probably a more confident person. Knowing that he's able to do that should the situation arise. A lot of these kids, that was just kind of the thing in the '90s. Everybody talked shit to each other. That was, that was it. It's whatever. Words are one thing. But if someone puts their hands on you, okay, can you defend yourself? So, I can't really prepare them for the words that, kids say and use now. I mean, it's probably a little bit different now too because everybody's got a camera and a phone and whatnot, so it never dies, so it's a little bit different. I think everybody should train because if you knew that you could get choked out by somebody smaller, younger, a girl or whatever, you'd be way less inclined to put your hands on somebody or try to start something because. For me, I don't got an ego, dude. I've been choked out by, teenagers, So, I understand my vulnerability. I know I'm not invincible, and I know that I can get got. Probably not by, average Joe walking down the street, but at the same time, I don't know what that guy knows. So, not that I've ever been like that, but if you know that, you can get choked out or beat up, you're probably not going to go looking for it.
Right. You had made mention that the younger guys they've been doing it longer at a younger age and they're more durable, and you remember being the guy thinking that you couldn't get knocked out or you were invincible or whatever. When but at the same time, I know that you came to the wisdom that that could be you before it actually happened. I know you've been submitted. I know that you was late in your career before somebody put your lights out. You know, uh, what happened before those moments that allowed you to train with that level of humility?
Shit, I did it to other people. You know what I mean? I was like, shit, of course you win, like you knock somebody out, but like, you know, I think it probably happened to everybody. But like, shit, that could be me. You know what I'm saying? I could be on the other, I could be on the other end of that. Um, so like when I first started training, I knew nothing. You know what I'm saying? So I was getting, you know, fucked up by everybody. Um, but I just kept coming back. You know, kept coming back, and then it happened less, and you know, less and less, and then eventually, you know, the people who were getting me, I was getting them, and then, you know, uh, and that's just kind of the life cycle. Like everybody knows, like, and maybe not everybody knows, but I knew that this time would come. I mean, man, you're not going to be young forever. You're not going to be, you know, 100% forever. Um, so I didn't want to be like Roy Jones Jr., for example. He's probably the best boxer of all time, right? But everybody only remembers his last few fights when he was getting knocked out. Like he fought too long. If he'd have hung it up after he won you know, when he was done like boxing in like major organizations, you know, everybody would probably say the same thing. But you know, now people only, you know, remember him as, you know, getting knocked out by whoever the guy he
Mhm.
got knocked out by. So you know, he kind of moves down the list, so to speak.
Yeah. The the idea that this is what came to my mind. Uh, how did you settle on 185? Because I didn't know that in the middleweight class you cut the most weight. You come down what 20 anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds for a fight.
Yeah, I try to keep myself at about 225. Because past
Hmm.
that, it's just, you're just eating like shit. And, you know, you need to dial it back a little bit. Um,
Hmm.
but I settled at 185 because I fought at 205 before, and those guys are so big. And it's not even just a weight thing, it's a stature thing. Those guys are like 6'3", 6'4", like they're big. And they're way more durable. And the athletic drop off isn't that much. And they hit harder. And I just always felt like, man, these guys have been training forever. I haven't been training nearly as long as these guys. So the one advantage I do have is athleticism and power. Right, I'm
Hmm.
not going to be the fastest guy at either weight class. And then when I hit the middleweights, they feel it. You know, I would hit some of the 205ers, and you know, we'd still be like right there in the middle. You know, still trading. And
Hmm.
so I just felt like, you know, the power and strength difference that I have at middleweight versus light heavyweight would serve me better at middleweight. So if I just like be disciplined and like watch what I eat when I'm getting ready for a fight, um, the weight cuts won't be so bad. And it was like they always say like the older you get, the harder it is to cut weight. The older I got, the easier it got because I got more discipline. You know,
Hmm.
people start putting money behind the nutrition aspect of fighting. So I wasn't like starving myself. I was actually eating more, um,
Hmm.
really looking at my micros and macros and you know how to put myself in a calorie deficit without not eating.
Hmm. Yeah. I want to circle back to something that you said about coming from football into the UFC and that being partly responsible for you getting there so fast. Was your amateur career really short compared to most people getting into the UFC? I don't know this part of the story with you.
Nah, I had a crazy long. It wasn't even long. I was an amateur for I think like 4 years. Um, Yeah, but I had like 25 fights. Nobody has 25 amateur fights. You know, those guys have like 10 amateur fights, 15 amateur fights, um, but nobody has like 24, 25 amateur fights. But also, that's due to the irresponsibility of my first coach, who I was fighting like every other weekend. Like, you're not, you need, like, especially as an amateur, you need to take time in between fights so you can actually develop a skill set and get better at the deficiencies that you have. But my
Mm-hmm.
coach at the time, he was like, just fight, 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 fight. You need ring time, ring time, ring time. After a certain point, that you've gotten all the ring time that you need, you know, you should be developing. But I wasn't developing. I was just, you know, I'd go in there, you know, I would, you know, punch them. You know, the fights would only last like 3 minute rounds. The fights would only last like a minute and a half. So I'm not getting ring time anyways. You know what I mean? I would have done better just to, like, you know, spar more, drill more, train more, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and not, you know, put the abuse to my body um, like I was.
Mm-hmm. When did you shift coaches? When did you start working with Chris?
I think I was with Chris maybe my last 3 or 4 amateur fights. 'Cause I
Oh
just got
shit! Right
tired.
there at the end.
Yeah, because I wasn't developing. I wasn't getting better. And I was just fighting all the time. And then, you know, that coach, he wouldn't show up to practice sometimes. So I was, you know, essentially training myself or whoever the old dog in the room was. But even the old
Mm-hmm.
dog was training with the other guy forever. So, you know, he really didn't know much. So, you know, I always took it like seriously. Like, I knew this is what I wanted to do after my very first fight. So what do I need to do that's going to put me in the best position possible to be
Mm-hmm.
successful? And I ain't with this guy. And, you know, I think just about, I think there's probably like 6 people from the state of Alabama who fought in the UFC, and all but 2 have trained with Chris at some point or another. So, you know, he's definitely the guy here in Alabama to put people in the, to develop somebody to get good enough to fight in the UFC.
Mm-hmm. Was there a because I know you took that first fight short notice coming into the UFC. Was there make it or break it stakes in that fight, or is it just I just want to see what it's like up there?
Nah, I mean, my foot was in the door. I signed a 4 fight deal coming in.
Okay.
Um, and was the champion of another organization, like a feeder into the UFC. So I knew I could fight. I knew I had like a skill set that, you know, how long I could fight or how many fights I was going to get. Had no idea, but
Mm-hmm.
I was quite confident going into that first fight.
That kid, Allen, right? That
Yeah. Uh huh.
you went to war with the last fight in the LFA, and then he's now in the UFC. Do you guys
Hmm.
compare notes at all? Are you guys in touch?
Yeah. You know, he actually went on one of those armed forces entertainment tours with me. Um, I hadn't really spoken to him since. You know, he was like 20, and I was 30 whenever we fought.
Oh
You
shit! I
know,
did. Okay.
yeah. So I really hadn't like talked to him much, and I think he's like top 6 in the world at middleweight. You know, so the kid definitely had skills then. He was just, you know, fighting a grown man. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so um, yeah, you know, I really got to know him as a person after, you know, on that tour, and you know, I'll hit him up. Like, I don't, we haven't had too many common opponents or anything like that, but yeah, you know, we stay in touch.
Okay. What now? What is it like? Because there's not a lot of you, right? Com- in terms of the pool, sparring partners and whatnot in fight prep. So I would imagine there's a considerable amount of overlap depending on your fight calendars and whatnot. What is it like to how many of your sparring partners that have helped you with the fight have you or vice versa have you actually fought for stakes in the octagon?
I trained with Brad before, the last guy that I fought. I trained with
Mm-hmm.
him years ago, especially when I first got in the UFC. I was like the new girl in school. You know what I mean? Everybody knew I came from football. Everybody knew I was an athlete. Everybody knew, I hit hard and, was a pretty disciplined person, would show up and train. So everybody would hit me up like, hey, you want to come train? You want to come train? So I've been to like all the major fight camps for the most part. So I've trained with a bunch of people. He may be the only person that I ever trained with that I fought.
Mm.
Um, I've been in the room with like Francis Ngannou and people like that. So Sean Strickland. So I kind of been around the block a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, are there any like handshake deals that is like, all right, it's never going to be you and me, or is it, if it comes down to it, it will be?
I mean,
What's the gentleman's code in the UFC?
I don't know how other people do it, but I never really got offered to anybody that I was close to. So it was like, whoever I have to fight, I'll fight. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I even tried to say no to Brad because, I love and respect his coach. So I didn't want to really, you know, cross that path. And I even shot him a text and I said, yo. But the UFC was like, yo, it's like, fight him or don't be in the UFC. So I was like, all right. Well, so, I'm not gonna like sacrifice my career to
Right.
maintain a friendship. And Brad's like that too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that he sees it as just like we competed. There's a winner, there's a loser. It is what it is. I don't think he's gonna like hold a grudge against me or nothing like that.
Mm-mm. I now, after being at the Apex, understand what you're talking about with regards to how intimate that venue is. It's so fucking loud in there, you know? Like I've been in the big arenas and been in the cheap seats and watched you do the thing on the big screen, and I've been ringside down in Brazil, and that was crazy all by itself. But geez, I can't, now that I say all that, I forgot that I'd been to so many of your fights in person. But the Apex is just, it's unique because it's so small. Like you can hear everything, like the smack of the leather on skin and checking kicks. It's like, I know that shit hurts.
This is the thing, like obviously, because like you're competing and there's like adrenaline and things like that. It always hurts a little bit less, and then after you win, it hurts even less after that
Mm-hmm.
until all the adrenaline goes away. Then it all starts to like settle in. But even when you came, they've expanded that. It used to only sit like 100 people, so you could like hear a pin drop in that place. So that might as well have been Madison Square Garden compared to what it used to be because
Mm-hmm.
they expanded it. I think it sits like 1,000 people now, um, or something like that. So even from what you saw, it's still bigger than what it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like the Apex because it's a smaller cage. It's a 24-foot cage, and when they go to like the bigger arenas, it's a 30-foot cage. So it's like a third smaller than
Mm-hmm.
what it is. So it entices the fight a lot more because you can't. There's nowhere to go. But I always like the roar of the crowd whenever you land a big shot or get a takedown or whatever. So perfect scenario for me, they would take that small cage and take it to the bigger arenas. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't make those decisions. So.
Yeah. What is the, over the course of your career, you came in as a striker, or probably the most comfortable in the stand up. Uh what is the skill set mixed martial arts wise that you developed the most over your career?
Probably the wrestling. But I started all this, everything at the same time: striking, jujitsu, wrestling. And early on in my career, you know, I would literally just walk across the cage, grab the dude, pick him up, put him down, and beat him up till the ref pulled me off. But obviously, when you see fighting like the top level guys, you know, it don't work like that anymore. So you really have to start putting everything together.
Mhm.
And then I really started like knocking people out. So I kind of got away from the wrestling for a while because why would I do all that if I could just if I could just hit you and you fall and then easy. Um, but you know, I started noticing like I wasn't as durable. I think I got dropped in every fight in my last five fights. So I was like, man, I need to go back to the wrestling to, you know, so I can get on top and I can hit them and they can't hit me. So I
Mhm.
really like started doing that again.
What is the difference between wrestling as a skill set and jujitsu?
Well, jujitsu is absolutely worthless if you can't get them to the ground. So you can
Okay.
be the best jujitsu player on planet Earth, but if you can't get them to the ground, then you are in fact a white belt. You know, so wrestling is like getting them down and holding them down, and then for me, jiu-jitsu is just like the submission part.
Aha. Okay. All right. I'm tracking now. That's a new one on me. Okay. Because
But you
I
see,
I've
you see a lot of jiu-jitsu people, they really struggle to get them to the ground, and they're mediocre strikers at best. And so now they just get their ass beat because they can't use their best skill set. And even when they do take them down, they can't hold them down.
mhm.
So how are you going to win if you can't even win the positional dominance game?
Mhm. So what is the when it comes to the training aspect of it, is there what's different about takedowns in jujitsu, or what doesn't exist in the takedown part of jujitsu that is prevalent in wrestling?
Um, I think like a lot of jiu-jitsu players, especially like the Brazilians, they don't wrestle; they use judo because you have
Okay.
the gi to grab and trip and do all those things with the throws and whatnot. So when you don't have those things to grab onto, it makes it hard, and you need to be able to wrestle the legs to take them down. Judo, they don't like grab the legs; they just try to trip and sweep and throw. Well, you don't have a gi to do that, and you can do a lot of the stuff without the gi.
Mhm.
But for me, I, like even if you look like I saw a stat not too long ago, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but if there's been 100 UFC champions, like 60 of them have come, or maybe even more than that, like 70 of them have come from a wrestling background. Then it's jujitsu, and I even think that number is a little skewed because you had uh, uh, Royce Gracie who submitted everybody, so that like skewed the numbers because no one knew what jujitsu was. They didn't know how to defend a rear naked choke or an armbar or things like that.
Mhm.
Now everybody trains everything, so you have to know everything.
Gotcha. Is uh is Thiago Santos still your favorite fight?
Um, you know, reflecting on my career, probably my first and last fights are my favorite.
Mhm.
Because, you know, my first fight, I went out there and knocked the guy out in a minute and a half. And then my last fight um, was my last fight, and I went out on a win. So, you
Mhm.
know, the rest of the stuff will, you know, kind of get mixed up and jumbled up. And, you know, I'll forget about them. But, you know, I'll always remember the first and the last.
Yeah, for sure. What is the biggest takeaway you're taking with you, you know, this concept of transcend and include? You've amassed all this discipline, this wisdom over the course of uh a really celebrated athletic career. If you even if you go all the way back to football, you know, you've transcended, included those skill sets and taking the things that are useful from one genre to the next, what do you, as you transcend fighting competitively into coaching, what are you taking with you from that into this next season?
Um, as far as coaching goes, like what it actually feels like to compete. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
have people in here who want to compete in jiu-jitsu. I have people who just do it for a workout. I have people who just do it for like self-defense or whatever. So I think like a lot of like people or coaches or whatever forget what it's like to be in the third round for the last round of a fight when you're exhausted and tired and things like that. So I like to like drill things into people's head. Like we drill a lot um, in the gym because it needs to be second nature, so that when you're tired or
Mm-hmm.
you're exhausted or whatever, like your mind is the first thing to go. Like, yeah, of course, like your arms are gonna get heavy, your legs are gonna get heavy, all that thing. But if it's second nature, when you get put in those bad spots, you'll be able to like work your way out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't train like that, then when you get put in those bad spots, you kind of panic or you hesitate too long or whatever. So, no, we do a lot of drilling. So, and like, even in that Brad Tavares fight, that he dropped me in the second round. He was throwing up submission after submission, and doing all that stuff. But and I was still kind of like, yo, what's going on, kind of thing. But like as I watched the fight, like you just kind of like on autopilot, so to speak. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
try and do this, or this is happening. I need to do that. I need to pass this guard, and it's because I trained when I was exhausted in these positions and situations.
Yeah. That brings up, as you're watching tape back on any fight, let alone the Tavares fight, are there moments that that you're watching and you're like, I don't remember that. I don't remember doing that. Like,
Yeah, like 5 minutes into the fight, like as soon as the fight starts, that you can kind of recall things, but a lot
mhm.
of times it doesn't happen how you think it happens, or there was something that happened before that led to that point that you just kind of like, damn, I forgot that even happened.
Mhm. Interesting. What kind of coach are you? Having competed at the highest level numerous times in your life, is it hard for you knowing what you know when somebody comes in and says they want to fight or they want to compete? Is it hard for you to be like, no, you don't? Or do you welcome that and say and approach it with a we'll see mentality? Like how are you as a coach in terms of your ability to not pass judgment on your people?
Well, I don't want fighters, right? They just require too much time and attention, and they all have like an ego, and it's always me, 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 me.
Mhm.
So I don't want fighters. As far as jujitsu goes, go for it, dude. Go see if that's really what you like. If that's really what you want to do. Because the
Mhm.
consequence is way less. Like, so you got choked out, big deal. You didn't get punched in the face. You know what I mean? You didn't like for real get hurt uh,
Mhm.
doing so. So like jujitsu, dude, we just had a jujitsu competition this past weekend here in Birmingham. I had 22. I got 85 students. 22 of the 85, and
A
not even
quarter of
all
your play.
85,
Yeah.
but even more because not everybody who trains here does jujitsu. So we had a big group of people come and try it out. A lot of them, it was their first rep.
Mhm.
And I encourage, as far as jiu-jitsu goes, I encourage people to compete. Competing is the fun part. Training kind of gets stale and mundane and boring sometimes, but you know, being able to apply what you learn in a competitive environment,
Mhm.
that's fun, win or
Yeah.
lose. Like even some of the people who lost are like, man, that was so fun. It was so they get that rush, and that's
Mhm.
cool for me. You know. As far as fighters go, man, I don't want none of them motherfuckers coming in here.
dude, that's got to be just you know, when you shut it down for the night and you turn off the lights and you lock up the doors, you know, I know I felt that when I was in the gym, and I 100% feel that in the transformations that, you know, I'm creating alongside my clients now in their lives journey. That's got to be super fucking cool. That feeling of, yeah, we moved the needle today. We made people better today. What is that? What shows up for you when you think about what you're creating now?
I think it's easiest to see it with the kids. You know, they first come in, you know, they can't look you in the eye, their shoulders are all slouched forward, they whisper when they talk. And then, you know, they aren't very athletic or they don't do well at first, but they keep showing up, they get better. Um, in jiu-jitsu, we do a lot of live stuff. So, okay, here's a situation, we're starting in this position, person on bottom, you can do this, this, and this. Person on top, you can do that, you know, whatever. Um, and when they first come in, of course, they get smashed because they're training with somebody who's been training, and they know absolutely nothing. But then that light bulb clicks on, or maybe they were too passive at first, and then you encourage them, like, yo, you got to try harder, you got to fight harder, blah 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 blah. And then you see that light bulb click, and you know, it just kind of reminds me of me when I first started, dude. I was getting, you know, beat up by everybody in the gym when I first came in. And then it
Mm-hmm.
happened a little bit less, and I started winning. And then kind of like what we talked about earlier, and to see that happen to a 7-year-old, and it's because like you know I do have a big part to do it, a
Mm-hmm.
big part in that kid's like development and and
Mm-hmm.
confidence and things like that. And then they walk in the door, their shoulders a little bit higher, they look you in the eyes, they
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit with more confidence. Like you see their demeanor change. That's the best part for me. You took this kid who, you know, just you know, the parents kind of sometimes like some of the parents is like a last resort. He's like, yo, my kid's not good at football. He's not good at baseball. He's not good at this. He's like, you know, help this kid. And then boom, you do exactly what the parent brought their kid for you to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a rewarding thing. It's like, yeah, look at this kid now, dude. You know, and I'll tell their
Yeah.
parents, and the parents will tell me, he's like, yo, little Johnny, you know, he's really loving it, and you know, we've seen a lot of change in his behavior, and yada yada yada. And it's like, fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dude, how do you, you know, that I love all of that. And what are you doing to manage like the helicopter parents or the parents that are so risk adverse, it's detrimental to the child? Like they bring him in, he gets his ass handed to him because he doesn't know anything. Like you said, he's inexperienced. And what are the conversations like with the parents that are uh lack the awareness that it will come with time and it's okay?
We kind of like see that because you know, like they'll get up and they'll you know try to talk to their kid, and I'm just like, yo, you don't exist for this hour. You don't. Like I am the coach. Let me do my job. What you brought your kid here, like you know, you're fucking me up by talking to your kid, or you know, some of the kids will keep
Mm-hmm.
looking over at their parents, and I'll tell them, I was like, yo, your parents don't exist for this hour, dude. Like, so don't say nothing to your kid. If you have to go run errands, go run errands. You know, leave them here with me. Like it's cool. Like I got cameras here. Like there's other people. Like nothing's gonna happen to your kid.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you're really stunting their growth, so to speak, if you keep doing what you do at home while he's here at the gym. Just
Mm-hmm.
trust me. You know, I've been doing this. Like I know how to do it. Just relax
Yeah.
and let your kid get choked out, dude. Fuck. You know, it's fine. You know, he'll tap and then, you know, he'll cry or she'll cry or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
first time. You know, it's okay. You know,
Does that go over pretty well, or do you have? Is there? Are we just letting the law of repetition do its thing?
um, you know, some parents are more like hands-on, if you will, than others. Some parents, they don't even get out of the car; they just watch them walk in the door and bounce. And I would prefer it that way, honestly, because they don't have to worry about. It's like, oh shit, my dad's watching, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about mom. Like, go Johnny, go. Like, yo, be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your kid
Yeah.
will act totally different if he forgets that you're here. So just chill, let it happen. It's fine. Your baby got choked out, no big deal. He's still alive. He's
Mm-hmm.
going home with a little sore throat, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Bring him back tomorrow, and he'll be better because of it.
Yeah. Tiago out here, he promoted Cameron into the teens class, and
Yeah,
she comes up, she's like, just starstruck. I don't know if I want to do that. Those kids are bigger than me. Da 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 da. Just super self-conscious about the whole thing, right? And that's the class that Tristan's been in for a little while now, and they're back to back. So she did her class. She gets the whisper in the ear, like, "Hey, this is your last kids class. You're moving into the teens class." And she's like, "I don't know if I want to do that." And since Tristan was on deck anyway, we stuck around and we had her just drop into that teen class. And, with the idea that she was going to get a feel for it, and she ended up loving it. And now she's thriving in it. So to your point, if you've done your job as a parent and you've put your kids in a trusting, safe environment, i.e. Eryk knows what the fuck he's doing, you can't trust that a little bit. You got to trust it all the way,
yeah,
you know, and let your kid grow from there.
yeah. And I get it. Like Israel did jujitsu all growing up, and now he wrestles, and even he's 16 years old and a sophomore in high school, and still I'm just like you know go get him, like dude, But at the end of the day, like win or lose, it's like he needs whatever happens. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If he loses, it's like, hey, dude, you know what? Fuck, sometimes buddy just better than you, and that is a really hard pill to swallow, especially in individual sports. But it's the reality of it,
Mm-hmm.
And you may beat him one day, but it ain't today,
Mm-hmm.
So it's all good, Go to practice on Monday, work on whatever it is that how that kid beat you, and the next time you see him, and you will see him again. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you felt him before, so go do better.
Yeah, man. Where can everybody find you nowadays, man?
I'm probably you find me I'm either at the gym or the house, and you ain't coming to the house, so pull up at the gym, Ya Boi Fitness in Vestavia. Um, Social media, Ya Boi Fitness, and then that's where I be at.
There you go. There you go. Dude, I know you're busy. I know you're making it happen. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, your class schedule, and making an impact on your community to share your wisdom and knowledge with the audience, man. I'm grateful for you, brother.
Yeah, anytime, man.
For sure. I love you, dude. For everybody out there,
Yeah, you
if you're on a
too.
mission to be the fittest leader possible, that comes down to integrity, courage, and ownership. And it all rests upon the foundation of alignment first. Check out nextlevelhq.co and join us in the Leaders Forum to catch not only these conversations, but any and all things aligned leadership. Until next time, alignment first.